Hello out there. Welcome to the 8th technical webinar of the EUROCONTROL Stakeholder Forum series. We welcome you wherever you are. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Today, we will be looking at a key development in the creation of seamless air traffic management environment, the implementation of a harmonized, improved military flight plan across Europe, the so-called improved OT flight plan. Together with our panelists that you can see already on the screen that I will introduce, and they will introduce themselves afterwards, we will address the following big questions as a start to initiate a thorough discussion on what the improved OT flight plan will be about. These 4 questions are: first, what's the real benefit for Europe of introducing a harmonized flight plan for military flight operations? Quite an interesting question, I think, especially an easy one to start with. Second, how should the aviation community go about implementing this solution? Because obviously, if we don't have a majority of states or entities like ANSPs and so on introducing this, the effect of the improved OT flight plan will not be exploited to the full extent. The third question would be, what are the main challenges ahead? Because obviously, the introduction, which is the implementation and the deployment afterwards, will not come without a price to pay, that's for sure. Nothing is for free. And of course, last but not least, what and when, and that's more important, when can we expect to see it being implemented in the European ATM system? So please allow me to give you a very brief introduction into the improved OT flight plan that has been developed in industrial research of the Single European Sky ATM research, the CESAR environment for the last years, 6-7 years we have worked on this. And of course, you can expect that the improved OT flight plan is not just a tool that we are providing, it has been tested, of course, within its operational environment and has been considered to be verified and validated in a perfect way. So CESAR, as I was mentioning already, of course, is addressing a brand new European architecture. And this is also already being developed in the so-called EATMA architecture, the European ATM architecture of the future. And that will be a very dynamic and flexible ATM system driven by IT technology and so basically through automation. This will have an effect on all stakeholders, the operational stakeholders and the technical stakeholders, let me call them like that, in ATM, including non-business driven operational stakeholders, like the military. And please, whenever I use the word military, we use military as the main airspace user or the main entity that is using the improved OT flight plan in the future. It could be any entity that is having a state aircraft, for example, customs or police, or it can also be industry having a test flight that is not matching the typical GAT trajectory of a flight. So that is, whenever we say military, that's what we mean. It's of course a broader scope and not only the military. That's important to understand. In order to ensure a proper representation of these operational requirements expressed through a flight plan, new procedures and tools need to be put in place. The improved OT flight plan and harmonized flight plan will be an available tool to cope with those challenges brought. However, it is in the remit of the member states and their respective military authorities or other authorities to deploy and use the offered tool when searching for different means to reach the performance targets, because they are also relevant, of course, for the whole of the network, the performance targets, and meet expectations set at the local or regional level. Sorry, local or sub-regional level, which addresses the European level. The improved OT flight plan provides a means to expressing military mission needs, conforming today's flight planning requirements, using the ICAO 2012 flight plan. Yes, we are using the ICAO flight plan 2012 as a basis because we thought this will have the highest probability of being implemented and distributed, or let's say deployed afterwards. At the same time, it represents the initial mission trajectory. So we're not only looking at today's time-based operations, we're also looking into the future of the trajectory-based operations environment in which this improved OT flight plan or the initial mission trajectory would be, let's say, deployed into. In addition, The improved OT flight will ensure further OAT-IFA harmonization and standardization within controlled airspace of all states that have chosen to implement the Euro OAT in accordance with the Eurocontrol specifications for harmonized rules of operational air traffic under instrument flight rules inside controlled airspace of the ECAC area. So we're really reaching out for the ECAC area, at least, of course, for the so-called IFPS zone, which is the distribution area of the IFPS system of the network manager of Eurocontrol. This especially, but not only, addresses cross-border operations. And that makes it very interesting, of course, not only for the military, but also to the other stakeholders that I was already referring to. So let me then introduce the 4 panelists that we have invited for today. So now we should see the slide with the faces popping up. I will wait for you to see it once I have put my earplugs back in. So you see on the left side, Mr. Cesar Nicolai. He's a senior ATC ATFSM expert from the Eurocontrol Network Management. To his right on the slide, you see Lieutenant Colonel Nicolas Meu. He's the head of Airspace Utilization Division at the State Aviation Safety Authority in France. You see Mr. Christoph Schippers. He is the Operational System Team Coordinator at Eurocontrol Maastricht in Murg. And last but not least, of course, you see Mr. René Kurzenberg. He's an ATC specialist, the local national supervisor of the US Army Flight Operation Detachment in Germany, which is close to Wiesbaden, just to let you know. So to shape today's discussion, we invite you, our guests for this webinar, to participate and submit your questions using the Q&A function. You see it on the left side of the slide. If you're experiencing any issues here with the Q&A part, the Q&A part is of course on the right side of the slide. So if you're experiencing any issues, then of course you can still use the chat function of this webinar. So first, before we go into the discussion and we start trying to answer the 4 big questions that are already introduced to you, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Cesar Nicolai, the Senior ATFCM and ATC expert of the Eurocontrol Network Management, to take the floor. Please, Cesar, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Edgar. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cesar Nicolai. I'm working in the Airspace and Capacity Division in Network Manager, Eurocontrol. And I have an experience of 20 years working in the military. My background is air traffic control. I worked 5 years at air traffic controller in approach control, and then 12 years of route control after joining Eurocontrol, the Civil Military Coordination Division, for 3 years. And then I left the military and joined Network Manager. You will hear me a lot saying today we, because I am representing a team of experts in Eurocontrol. It's not only me. It's rather a very good team encompassing the Airspace Capacity Division, the Technical Division, the Operation Division, our colleagues from the Ops Room, our infrastructure colleagues. So it's a team effort for Network Manager to implement this improved OAT flight plan in Europe. And I would just like to give you some NM perspective about this improved OAT flight plan. So we have some prerequisites before implementing this flight plan. Prerequisites for the implementation NM system. We decided we cannot go in one bang. It's impossible. The issue is too complex. So we decided together with the military community and our colleagues from CMAC division to have a stepped approach. That means several NM releases, and later on all the requirements to be identified in our new system INM. And the geographical area of application is not the entire IFP zone, but we will create a rather restrained improved OAT flight plan region. We need to address the issue of military aeronautical data. First of all, they need to be in our system, in CACD, which is the Central Airspace and Capacity Database, in the correct format, which is ICAO Annex 15 format. They must be coordinated at state level between civil and military stakeholders. And we need to decide for each and every piece of data on the usage by other airspace users, not only by the military. We also need, together with the military community, which will be involved with us, to address the FTN addresses, the distribution part, and also to have a look at the flight performance data we have in our systems. We also need very carefully, and this is a mandate we received from the Network Directors of Operations, NDOP group, to look at the transition and expansion plans for this OAT flight plan. So the initial implementation for us, for NM, it will be in April 2023 with release 27. We have a functional block which is called initial phase of improved OAT flight plan implementation. And I would like to stress that it's not everything. So we start slowly with round robin flights or long navigation flights, as you might call them in the military. So we will not have in item 15 the stay, which is associated with the restricted or reserved airspace, with the holding pattern, or with aerodrome work. So we go only with this round robin flights for the moment. Sounds like a basic functionality, but we need to thread very carefully because there are a lot of challenges to be addressed, and we address them one by one. The sign that this is the new format, the only new element I must say, you will find in item 18, you have EUR/OAT, Echo Uniform Romeo/OAT. This is the indication that it's a new format. This is the improved OAT flight plan format. We will work a lot on semantic and syntax check. We will do a lot of very thorough analysis regarding the reception of these flight plans, processing and validation, and then distribution. And we will set up an iOAT region. For the moment, we have some tentative candidates to be confirmed by the end of November. Germany, France, and Belgium. Thank you very much for this. For the moment, also, we will use the legacy system, so AFTN. There is no discussion for the moment, I repeat, about the B2B services. And when it comes to confidentiality, and I think this will be also a question today addressed, please use the EUR protected mechanism which is in place today. Just to give you a highlight, what is going on today. So as this situation is like this, you have the green OAT, pure OAT flight plans. Send them to us. We will not process them because we do not have the capability, the functionality today. The GAT or the GAT, the mixed GAT OAT flight plans filed from the military operators are processed. The GAT completely. The mixed GAT OAT, we process the GAT portion. The OAT portion of field 15, we do not process it. We don't validate it, and we distribute based on the military operator request. We can distribute this mixed OAT GAT field 15 as it is to the concerned air traffic service units. So I repeat, we do not process today OAT portion of the mixed OAT GAT. In the future, so to be phase, and this is the initial phase, we will go for release 27. We will set up, as you see in blue, the OAT region, and this improved OAT flight plan format will be accepted only if the entire flight plan profile is within this region. For whatever goes outside or coming from outside, as you see the bottom, OAT, pure OAT flight plans going outside this region, or GAT or mixed GAT OAT, the mechanism stays as it is today. So if a military operator going from the improved OAT region outside, he will use the today mechanism. If it's pure OAT flight plan, we use the normal local flight plan, which will not be processed by FPS. Our goal is in the future to have this OAT region matching IFPZ. But this is the future, and we hope to have a very smooth transition and achievement of our goal. Thank you very much, Edgar, for your time and invitation.
My pleasure, Cesar. Thank you very much for your introduction. That was very interesting to see your personal view from the network manager perspective. Now I would like to give the floor to Lieutenant Colonel Nicolas Meu, who's the head of Airspace Utilization Division of the State Aviation Safety Authority in France. Dear Nicolas, you have the floor.
Yes, good afternoon. I am Lieutenant Colonel Nicolas Meu from the French ATM Directorate in Paris. I am head of Airspace Utilization Division. I am 36 years carrier in the Air Force, as a controller in the air defense, AWACS, and approach. Today, I will show you some elements regarding the using of the OAT, the importance of the flight plan in the OAT, and the evolution that we are expected in the next few months in France. Of course, for the armed forces, preserve the freedom of action with the third dimension is paramount for us. However, to take account of a single sky, European sky evolution, and contribute to an enhanced compatibility between the OAT and GAT flights, armed forces must contribute to improve predictability in a pan-European network level. It is very important for us to communicate our flights and to have information about our neighbors' flights, OAT. Pending the implementation of the mission trajectory studies at this time in the CESAR plans, we have to focus on flight plans in OAT or mixed OAT-GAT. Today, it's the only short-term solution to tackle this issue. In France, since 1917, we have conducted a study with our headquarters and all the operational headquarters from the Air Force, Navy, and Army to study the OAT evolution. This study shows that the real trajectories of OAT flights, most of them are nowadays direct route from airfield to another airfield or airfield to their training area. And the current network that we have in France is not very accurate, and we have to update it. The flight plan format may be also adapted to make it compatible with the new DGST system that we will use in the military control unit that was collocated with the DGAC center. The flight plan, the OAT flight plan management must be facilitated between the centralized flight information desk. This is the unit that manages all the OAT flight plan in France, and the collocated, that I said, the collocated civil to military control center level. We have built an action plan that is planned to be planned in the 2022. It is divided in two big parts. The first part is the harmonization of the OAT flight plan. Our flight plan is must be updated. That is, has some differences between the format that we have at this time and the ICAO format. So we are building a new ICAO format, and we will implemented it in the next 4 months. Where we will have also adapted to adapt the OAT flight plan format, paves the way for more efficient OAT flight management and planning. And also, we have required to establish a DSNA defense protocol to processing OAT flight plans at this time with a new format, and to adapt in the future iOAT format with IFPS. Of course, we have established new rules to respect for any OAT en route pure flight plan and mixed OAT GAT flight plan. On the other side, we are simplifying OAT route network. Our actually network was built about more 60 years ago, and now it is not operate and not accurate. We have to optimize the trajectory in order to integrate the new for-flight and co-flight DSNA system. And this system will integrate the real trajectory of the flights. In this objective, where we will do the suppression of former OAT routes, and we will create a reference point, and particularly in the training area and in a route. If I can say, it will be a military free route. And the last thing is the accommodation of OAT flights with the new free route airspace in France. It will be the first implementation of free route will be done in the 2 Decembers, and we have already adapted OAT procedure for the crews to integrate this free route airspace and to do the handover between OAT and GAT. To summarize my elements, I will do that. We have 2 main objectives. In the short term, we have to improve planning and predictability of OAT flights in Europe. It is very important. And we have to automated consideration of OAT flight plans by NM to facilitate the handling by crews and control agencies, military and civil, in particular for cross-boarding flights. We have to, for us, for the military, it is very important, but because we have to take a better consideration of military control capacities. And on the other side, in the longer term, it will be the first step for an easier implementation of business and mission trajectory for air navigation system will be enable military trajectory to be taken into account in GAT flows. And also we have to improve integration of defense requirements, mission trajectory by operation, including the training areas. And finally, we have to do the more optimized OAT flights and OAT GAT deconflicting trajectories. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Nicolas, for your very interesting presentation. I would like to hand over now to our operational system team coordinator of EUROCONTROL MUAC and Maastricht, to Mr. Christoph Schippers. Christoph, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Edgar. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Christoph Schippers from Maastricht, UAC. I am currently team coordinator of the Maastricht Operational Systems team. In that role, the team and myself, we are basically responsible to capture user requirements from all of our system users and convert them into, let's say, correct technical requirements. If I would put it down in a one-liner, the task of the team is to make sure that things are built correctly, but even more important is that we build the correct things for our users, for our system users. I've been working already 16 years for EUROCONTROL Maastricht in a variety of roles, from engineer to operational expert to system level engineer. And I've been involved in quite some, let's say, military functions developments. Some of them I've listed on the screen. Maybe the most noticeable one is the third bullet you see there is the shared ATS system. I don't know if probably not all participants know, but the Maastricht, let's say, system or the Maastricht ANSP provides with one system its ATS services to two ops rooms at the same time. So at one side, the MOAC ops room, where civil military cross-border control is done from the MOAC ops room, and at the same time also the Belgian military, the Belgian Air Force is using our system to provide air traffic services from, let's say, Brussels ACC. Very short, why iOAT from an ANSP perspective? Why is it important? The way it's important to achieve basically two goals. The first of it is an harmonization, and I will detail that further. And secondly is predictability of OAT traffic. As a cross-border ANSP, which provides both civil and military services, we're faced with a lot of fly plans from different users, and I just put down some here on the screen. And the problem we face actually is there is a difference in interpretation. Although users might mean the same, the way it is filed, it is often different. And you see that in the two top examples. They're both filing, let's say, at a certain point to stay. Well, okay, the left example basically means it's going to do an air refueling. On the other side, it's basically meaning, okay, it's going to do some navigational approaches. From a user perspective, from a human perspective, you can quite easily distinguish, but for a system, this is not at all, it's not easily parsable. So there is a lot of manual handling required in order to, let's say, reflect the correct mission to an ATC system. So that is what iOAT brings to me, that's harmonization. So it will bring the technical means, let's say, to align, to make sure we all have the same understanding of, let's say, the mission of an OAT flight. Secondly, I think it also should bring what I call semantic interoperability, meaning even today there is an ICAO fly plan, but you can still basically file as you like. You can, let's say, overrule some of the rules, but I think the semantics should be correct and should be, let's say, corrected with this iOAT flight planning filing. Now, once we achieve that, I think we can go a step further in the future, and that's work on predictability. As an ANSP, we do a lot of effort to get hold of the right sources of data in order to predict our traffic. We spend a lot of effort on that because we basically base our sectoring opening time on that, our manning capacity is based on that. And anything we miss out perturbates our picture and makes us less inefficient. There is, of course, the typical cases like bad weather, yes, that perturbates a picture. But there is also the OAT traffic, which adds to it as it's today filed, and as you can also, as I explained, with the manual manipulations we have to do, we don't have a real accurate view on all the OAT traffic, and as such, it basically deteriorates our let's say our capacity planning. So that's why iOAT, I think, is for us one of the elements that helps in getting a better predictability picture, and why it is important for us as an ANSP. So that was it. So I hand now the floor to René.
Thank you very much, Christoph, for sharing your perspective from Maastricht Upper Area Control Center with us. And the next panelist, last but not least, is Mr. René Kurzenberg, our ATC specialist and local national supervisor of the US Army Flight Operations Detachments close to Wiesbaden in Germany. René, the floor is yours. We cannot hear you, I guess.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is René Kurzenberg. I'm calling from the Army Flight Operations Detachment of the US Army here in Wiesbaden, Germany. And in case you are not familiar with the Army Flight Operations Detachment, you may want to think of it as a central AIS ARO as it is a centralized flight planning service to US Army air crews in Europe and beyond. And among other duties, we process flight plans and related messages for a variety of aircraft, helicopter, fixed wing, etc. So my view is more from the operational side, from the flight plan filing perspective. And the current ICAO flight plan offers only limited means to indicate activities, no matter if it's en route or at an airport. So very often activities have to be described free text in the remarks section of the item 18 of the flight plan, which you have seen in the previous presentation already. So while human beings involved are able to understand this information, they are usually not machine readable because the terminology is not standardized. So OAT flight plans may fail to be processed automatically by the systems involved. Information may be dropped because the flight script for the controller cannot display the whole item 18. OAT flight plans very often require manual handling, and it can happen that the remarks section is just overlooked, ignored, with the result that the controllers involved will not have a full picture of what the mission is trying to achieve. And for cross-border operations, it can be difficult too, because you need to have a flight plan being compliant with quite a few national regulations involved. And I think the iOAT might be a solution to those problems. Back to you.
Thank you very much, René. That was a typical controller attitude, short and concise. Perfect. Thank you very much, although you're not a controller, but still you hit it perfectly. Let me please introduce myself now after our 4 panelists, which I consider the most important people now in this webinar. Myself, my name is Edgar Räuber. I'm here from EUROCONTROL, the Civil Military Coordination Division that deals, as the name obviously implies, with all the issues that are specific to the military, but very important to understand, we don't look at military only, we always define ourselves as the mediator or moderator, if you like, between the civil and the military world, because as the flexible use of airspace implementing Rule 2150 from 2005 implies, we have one continuum of airspace that we all share together. So that concerns all the operational stakeholders within the ATM system, or if you like, within the European airspace. So thank you very much. That was my short introduction. My background is ATCO, and with some academic background, of course, also that supports my activity that I mainly performed within the CESAR environment, developing, as an example, the improved OAT flight plan where I was involved from 2016 to 2019. And still am a little bit partially at site. So I would like to open now the panel discussion. So there will be a slide now coming up showing you that this is the Q&A session now starting. As I said before, you can use the Q&A, and if you have technical issues, you can also use the chat function. I can see already the first questions popping up. And of course, we also have some questions, the so-called big questions that I showed to you already before, that were shared with the panelists before. And in order to have a light start into this discussion, I would like to start with the very first question, which is, and I repeat it, what's the real benefit for Europe of introducing a harmonized flight plan for military flight operations? And who could be, let's say, the best person or panelist in this case to answer to this, if not a typical airspace user perspective, is potentially what we are aiming at to provide a benefit. So I would like to ask first Mr. René Kurzenberg about what do you see as the main benefits. Of course, we will not be able during the whole panel discussion to cover all the benefits, but maybe if you can have a quick sketch of what the benefits are for your side. Thank you very much, René.
Yeah, thank you. Just a few points I have. I think the ability to clearly indicate the intentions of military activities in an extended flight plan, especially in item 15, can enhance the understanding of all parties involved, because everyone would using the same terms, bringing all parties involved into the same sheet of music. And using standardized indicators in the flight plan should help automation. So the flight plan would be more machine readable, so increasing the automation, reducing the workload of the parties involved. I can see that the calculation of demand and capacity can benefit with OAT flight plans being available in IFPS. And if this solution would be implemented in several states or maybe in a whole region, this would really support cross-border operations where we now have to stick to all kind of national regulations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, René. That was a very interesting view from the US Army perspective. And then, of course, I was thinking about the French Air Force. Nicolas, maybe you can allude a little bit your view on what are the potential benefits, because so far, of course, the improved flight plan is not being deployed or implemented. But what do you expect as benefits, especially for the French Air Force point of view? Thank you very much, Nicolas.
Yes, for them, it is very important because we have a very radical changes this time in France on the DSNA part, but on the military, because we will use the same system and in the OAT control, and we will use the same process, and the major, the important things is the communication between countries, because at this time we have some problems, in fact, on one side to join, for example, crews on the neighbors airfield, and to communicate with them and to inform them for something, perhaps some problems on the capacity of control or something like that. And when the crews arriving at the border, there will be some problems with the handover, and we have some percentage of flights that are arriving in the French airspace that are not planned, and I think the more communication and more information between control agencies and crews and control agencies are a key factor, more fluent control of the OAT in Europe.
Okay, thank you very much, Nicolas. So your emphasis is really on cross-border operations to mitigate potential communication issues that you might have in order to have a clear indication of what my flight intentions are. And as I understood it, also on the other side, you are now more aware of if there are coming cross-border flights into your airspace also, that you on the other end are now better understanding what the intentions are, and therefore there's a lot of clarification, which in the end, of course, is also a very important safety aspect that we are addressing here particularly. So thank you very much on that, Nicolas. Now we have seen two perspectives from the US Army and the French Air Force, but of course they're flying in an airspace that is controlled, and we're always addressing IFR flights in controlled airspace, just for you to understand when we talk about the improved OT flight plan. Then of course this airspace is being managed by the air navigation service providers, and although Christoph of course is a specialist from the technical side, as we understand in MUAC, I would expect that the issue that René raised before, which belongs to automation and harmonized procedures that are, let's say, reducing complication and reducing workload, is that something that from a MUAC perspective, Christoph, is also something that you expect or that you would support positively, or do you have your doubts on that?
No, I would for sure support it, because indeed, okay, as I mentioned in my intro, just giving these three examples, you have three flight plans meaning the same, but they are filed differently. So there is a lot of manual manipulation in that. So by only reducing that, let's say we have already an improvement at our side. Maybe one other aspect, and maybe particularly for MUAC, okay, the iOAT is about, let's say, network performance. But it is not only about between civil and military. I think if we increase predictability with iOAT, it's also between military and military, for sure, in the MUAC, let's say, airspace.
Thank you very much, Christoph. Yes, that is an important thing. Whenever we talk about civil-military coordination, of course, this should include, and you pointed out very correctly, military coordination up front, right? Because if the militaries are not, let's say, well aligned and coordinated in between, then it makes it a little bit more difficult in order to coordinate between the civil and military part. So that's obviously a very important point. We have heard already several times the codes, like it was said in one of those questions that we have received that I cannot see right now, but the question was raised whether these OAT and GAT terms are only provided within the IFPZ zone. Well, OAT and GAT, to make it short, of course, are abbreviations, operational air traffic and general air traffic, that are defined via ICAO and therefore go beyond the IFPZ zone. But of course, as we are initially aiming for the IFPZ zone, we consider them, of course, relevant for the IFPZ zone initially when we start deploying and implementing the improved OT flight plan. Whatever happens later on, that of course is then, you know, the story to be told, to see in how far the improved OT flight plan is a valuable tool to be used, to see how many states, ANSPs, entities are joining us in the deployment and implementation. Well, implementation is on the NM side, but on the deployment side in the future. And then potentially, of course, we consider this to be a valuable tool also outside the IFPZ. But this is out of scope for today's discussion. I just want to show you that we're not limiting ourselves for the IFPZ for the time being, that we are also considering this to be a valuable tool. And of course, we are on our way and preparing already some presentation towards ICAO in order to make some kind of advertisement for that. So that is something that should be of interest, and I hope this answers one of the questions that I already saw in the Q&A part. There was another question that brings us again to the OAT-GAT part, which is addressing whether OAT-GAT mixed flight plans will be validated within the IFPS system. I think Cesar has maybe seen this question. Cesar, can you maybe have a quick answer to this question?
Yes, Edgar, I will try to answer the question. I was not, I think, clear enough because I had a very short time slot to introduce the NM perspective. So the mixed OAT-GAT with the new format will be completely processed. The whole item 15, the whole route will be processed and distributed by NM if the entire flight profile stays within the region we create initially. If you go outside the region, or if you come out from the outside the region, please use what is today in use, the mixed OAT-GAT portion. But be aware again that the OAT portion will not be processed by NM and distributed as it is. So we will not run any validation. We will just distribute it as it is the case today. For example, for UK, receiving flights from Germany, at a certain moment in time, at a waypoint, they switch from GAT to OAT. And this is the signal for NATS that the air traffic service provision has ended and the military control has taken over. And we will distribute this portion, but we will not process it. So the processing for the new OAT flight plan for the mixed OAT-GAT only within the region, which I repeat for the moment, and we wait for the confirmation by the end of November, is Germany, France, and Belgium.
Okay, thank you very much, Cesar. I think that clarifies this point. I see some other questions coming up that are quite of interest, but I think they are quite of technical nature, and we will come to some technical aspects later on. So please accept me delaying those questions a little bit until we reach the panel discussion of question number 3. Because I think now it's the right time after we have highlighted some benefits of the system, that the improved OT flight plan will bring some benefits. We have seen some common benefits for the network. We have heard about some benefits for the stakeholders, which are especially in this case the military stakeholders. We have heard the American, the US Army, and the French position, but also we have heard that on the MUOC side, there are some benefits to be expected. So we have common benefits, we have benefits for the military operational stakeholders, and we have benefits also for the network, as Cesar pointed out already. So I guess it's the right time to leave question number 1 and go to question number 2. I will repeat it now. How should the aviation community go about implementing this solution? Well, implementing is one thing. I think the question also relates to implementing and deploying this solution. And I already said before that, of course, the real benefit in the end, because it relates to question number one, of course, the real benefit will only develop once all states within the ECAC area, or let's say within the IFPZ zone, will have deployed the improved OT flight plan. That's when the real benefit comes into play. So this is a long process, it's an iterative process, and of course, and I want to highlight this every time, it is on the decision of the states to implement it or not. It's not Eurocontrol, it's not CESAR results with a validation plan or whatever, with a result on the validation exercises that tells you, the states or entities, to implement it or to deploy it. It's your decision. It's a, if you like, a voluntary decision. Once you consider that the benefits connected to the improved OT flight plan are of benefit for you too. So how should this aviation community now go about? I said already, the more the better, but of course that is a very general statement. I would like to see your view on this. Maybe Cesar, as you are representing the network manager who has the wider view, if I may say, what is the point here of what do we expect for the aviation community to deploy or implement the improved OT flight plan?
Thank you, Edgar, and thank you for the question. As I said in my very short introduction, we will start in April 2023 with the NM release 27.0 to put a service in operations addressing this improved OT flight plan. It is very important, and I've seen also a question in the Q&A section. We highly encourage the participating states to come together with both military authorities and air navigation service providers, because our opinion is it cannot be implemented in isolation. So I think the state must decide which is the best for the state and come together with the civil and military component. We highly recommend this. And this is a very good opportunity to remind, I think you know for sure, that network manager, EUROCONTROL network manager has been appointed to support both the civil and military stakeholders in the network function implementing Rule 123 from 2019. So we are listening and implementing what is coming from both civil and military operational stakeholders. So we encourage you, we will do the first step. We will implement in IFPS and the other NM systems. We will implement this basic functionality first of improved OT flight plan. And we highly encourage you, the rest, civil and military authorities, to come and join us for the deployment.
Thank you very much, Cesar. I think this was really a very clear statement from the network management perspective. I want to narrow down a little bit the perspective and going towards MUAC, representing the MUAC airspace in which their navigation services, air traffic services to be precise, are being applied. What is the perspective on MUAC, on how the aviation community should go about? Because obviously, as MUAC is representing several states in here, you would expect that those states in which airspace you are performing or you are providing your services should also join, right?
Well, of course, yeah, we're a civil military cross-border ANSP, let's say, serving the 4 states. So basically, we listen to what our states say. So, but okay, indeed, we would expect them to support, I think, this iOAT matter. When I also, the more from a technical perspective, from ANSP side, okay, the more the better. You already said it, Edgar. It also makes it technically a bit easier because if a lot of states don't support it, let's say, then there is a long transition period. That means, again, from a technical perspective, the systems, at least the ANSP system, have to be able to support both kind of flight plan formats, both kind of rules which are behind. So I would say for the states, okay, please have a look at it. We can let's say, look together, provide more information on it, on how all this handling can be done. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much, Christoph. So really, basically, you're encouraging your member states to follow this improved OT flight plan deployment. And of course, you are willing to support whatever is within your powers to support on the technical side. And that, of course, will result in some operational support also at the same time. Do I get you right?
Well, of course, we are serving the 4 states. It depends on the states. What they tell us, we will support, of course.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. And just to come back to what César said before, please remember that the implementation of the software changes or system changes within IFPS, and we're only addressing IFPS in the beginning, so the flight processing system of Eurocontrol within the IFPZ, will be implemented with an M release number 27 in 2023. So don't expect any improved OT flight plan to be deployed or usable before that date. César, correct me if I'm wrong, that should be May or June in 2023, right?
It's April, Edgar, April 2023.
Okay, April 23. Okay, thank you very much, César. So I was going from the NM perspective into the MUAC perspective, and to narrow it further down, not in a negative way, but of course to see a specific stakeholder, operational stakeholder perspective on this, I would like to address France. Nicolas, what is your point about potential implementation? What does France have in mind? Do you have plans in order to implement, or in a correct word, deploy the improved OT flight plan format?
In fact, our plans are double. In fact, we will implement the new format that is completely full compatible with the IoT flight plan in the first trimester of 2022, and this is the first step. We are implementing the new format, and then this format is fully compatible with the new DSNA system control and flight plan processing. And it is very interesting because we will have 1 year experience with the air traffic control, civilian and military, and the crews and the experience of crews 1 year before the implementation of the new NM system. And it is very important that we will have the time to process and to correct eventually not the problem, but the correction of the flight plan or something, or regarding the new implementation of the new points regarding the OAT, and so we will have the time to process all the things, and we will be, I think we will be on time, and we have effectively we have to negotiate with the DSNA technically and operationally to comply with the IoT flight plan, but I don't think it will be a problem.
Okay, thank you very much, Nicolas. So you're also addressing a very important point here, which is compatibility, interoperability between systems. That is, of course, one of the things that we are facing, that we are ensuring, and that we have validated within the César environment for further validation, of course, because we all know that in César Industrial Research, we are only validating things up to the V3 level, and therefore everything that is the pre-industrial stage. So whatever comes later will be done by industry themselves, but they can be sure that this V3 can be reached for the improved OT flight plan. So thank you very much, Nicolas, for raising this very interesting point. I just saw a very interesting question here from Roberto Grasso from NATO International Staff, who says that he sees a contradiction between the words predictability and operational. So he says, if the flights are scheduled, in brackets commercial flights he's referring to, yes, we can presume predictability. If flights are operational, he doesn't see that. So I remember that predictability is something that Christoph was talking about before. So maybe Christoph, do you feel in a position to have an answer, or let's say a comment at least to this? It's not really a question, to this comment from Roberto.
Well, I think it's fairly right. I mean, civilian traffic or scheduled air flights are more predictable. Operational traffic, even with an IoT flight plan, will be less predictable than the civil scheduled airline. That will stay as is. But as I said before, each and every, let's say, percent or thing we can do to improve, we should do, at least That's my view from an ANSP perspective, because yeah, we try to achieve as less perturbation in the total view as we can. But I think it's correct in saying that scheduled flights are per definition more predictable. Although there is also a lot of perturbation there because they can be congested, delayed because of airports, etc.
Okay, thank you very much, Christoph. I hope, Roberto, this answers at least partly, if not to a bigger extent, at least to my understanding, your comment on this. But predictability and this potential contradiction that you see is maybe also something that relates to the air traffic flow and capacity management part of it. And please let me highlight again that what we are doing right now is only IFPS. We're not addressing ETFMS or air traffic flow and capacity management as you like it right now. It is on the list. Yes, potentially we will do it in a way we will see that is presently under discussion. I would say under heavy discussions because obviously there are different perspectives to it. So that's something for the future. We are looking on that, but not right now. So that's really on the timeline. So okay, I see the reply from Roberto. So he's happy with the answer of this. But of course, I want to come back to our big question, and I did not ask René, of course, because we had the French perspective. Maybe is there something, René, that you would like to add? Because I think from your perspective, US Army, that's maybe a little bit diverging to what we've heard before.
Well, I guess the challenge for us would be what changes are required, for example, in the system we currently use, so software changes. So if they are required, we are talking about many months, if not years, to get them implemented. So 2023 sounds like a very ambitious goal then.
Okay. Thank you very much for giving us a little bit of an insight of what is behind, because obviously you are addressing here procurement issues, you are addressing resources to be provided and so on, which I guess, and I think that's obvious, is the same for everyone, right, who wants to deploy the system, because obviously, and that brings us directly to the next question, this will infer some effort, some resources need to be spent, which need to be made available, of course, beforehand, in order to meet the technical challenges ahead, because obviously the improved OT flight plan, as I said before, does not come without a price. There's always a price you have to pay, or like the US say, there's no free lunch, and this is the same case here. So basically the question is, and that's one of the big questions we had on the list anyway, is what are the main challenges ahead? The first thing I think, and maybe this is just to open the discussion, is about aeronautical data provision. That seems to be a big issue, and I saw it also on the Q&A session. There were some questions already that are heading in the same direction when it comes to waypoints and so on. So from the aeronautical data provision, there are some database alignments necessary to be done. And I see Cesar already nodding his head. So I think, Cesar, as you are heavily involved and you have the good background for this whole EAD and so-called CACD, maybe you can allude and explain us what these abbreviations stand for and come a little bit closer to the question and provide us an answer, please.
Yes, thank you, Edgar. So I know that many military authorities will say, but we have migrated our aeronautical data to EAD, which is the European AIS database. It's very true and correct. But in the NM systems, we do not use EAD to cross-check all the environment data for each and every flight plan. We use our own database, which is called CACD, Central Airspace and Capacity Database. And unless we have all the military data, meaning the military waypoints, aerodrome, seed stars, military ATS routes, TACAN routes, everything in CACD, and I must highlight in the correct format, which is ICAO Annex 15 format, we will not be able to run any operations with the improved OAT flight plan. So there are two very strong prerequisites, which NM is trying to highlight to all the ATM stakeholders. We must have the ATM, the aeronautical data from the military in our database in CACD, and in the correct format, which is ICAO Annex 15. We would like also to encourage, to recommend to the military authorities to get in contact with the national ENV coordinators. We have set up in NM a mechanism involving these persons. For each and every state, there is an environmental data coordinator which is coordinating with NM all the inclusion of aeronautical data in our database, and in the end they validate this data. So we highly recommend to the military authorities to conduct this sort of state-level coordination and come and discuss with us. We'll do as much as possible in an automated way to try to extract from EAD in CACD this database. But I think it's quite an effort, an important effort. And I must again highlight this is a prerequisite. We cannot do it without it.
Okay, thank you very much, Cesar. That was pretty clear. Those requirements, as written down in ICAO Annex 15, have to be complied with. There's no way around. Which basically means also that we have to provide, if I'm not wrong, the 5-letter name code for names of waypoints and so on. That we have to migrate our national AIPs into the EAD in the best case, and that of course we have to find a way to convert or to send better the data from EAD into the CACD database of the network manager for the time being, which should be the database, the dynamic database for the future once the improved OT flight plan is deployed. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, perfect. Now that we have heard that there is some effort and resources to it, of course, it would be interesting to see how do our stakeholders, our operational stakeholders from the military look at this point. If I may ask Nicolas, how do you see? Is that the big issue for you to convert this data into a 5-letter name code conforming ICAO Annex 15?
Yes, I think it, for instance, it will be very difficult because we have, with the cancellation of former track routes, we have created many points, not many, but some new points, particularly in the training areas and for the navigation. And we have named it not in 5-letter codes. And so if we have to convert all these points in the, I think it will be difficult, but it will take quite a long time, I think so.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Nicola. That exactly is the impression that we also have. So that's really some effort that we have in front of us. There were some technical questions here in the Q&A session, of course. What is it? Can we expect the format in field 18? It's a question from Michael Persson from LFV, if I'm not mistaken. In field 18 to be written EUROCONTROL protected, to be used when deployed. Maybe this is a question that goes back to Cesar.
Yes, thank you, Edgar. The EUR/protected mechanism is in force today, and it is used by the many state authorities or military authorities. So our message from Network Manager is for the military authorities: whenever you do not feel comfortable with sharing flight plan data information with the rest of the ATM community, do not do it. Or use this EUR/protected mechanism, and we will make sure that only the air navigation or air traffic service unit indicated by you will receive the flight plan.
Okay. Thank you very much. And please allow me to mention that as there was a question in the Q&A regarding the EUROCONTROL, will states be obliged to use the improved OT flight plan through the EUROCONTRol? No. The clear answer is no, that will not be the case. EUROCONTRol is already a voluntary decision by the state, and the use of the improved OT flight plan is a voluntary decision by the state. And again, please let me highlight that the improved OT flight plan is not meant to express any flight intention during crisis or war. It's purely peacetime environment. That's why we're always addressing the IFPS. That is the system we use for flight planning, for the distribution of flight plans in peacetime operations. We're not addressing crisis or war. And I remember also there was a question from Roberto Grasso that he sent already up front to us from NATO International Staff, a very interesting one that was addressing the confidentiality issue. If I may, with the improved OT flight plan, we do not intend to distribute any confidential information into the environment. We have the protected functionality already today existing in IFPS. You can find in the IFPS manual today that we will simply use in order to ensure that the information within the flight plan is only distributed to those ANSPs where the flight goes through the area of responsibility. So that's one thing. The other thing is the improved OT flight plan, as I said, will not be used to distribute confidential information. So from our perspective, by definition, we have excluded any confidentiality issue here. And to be very clear, if a state, if the military decides that the information about one specific individual flight should not be shared with anyone, then don't share it. Don't file a flight plan. You're not obliged to use the improved OT flight plan to express that. That's pretty clear. Okay, so we have one last question. I'm sorry, but time is running. Before I start wrapping up, there's one question that we have already partially answered. That is the question of when can we expect to see it implemented? Well, it will be implemented by the network manager, and once it is implemented by the network manager, then the deployment for the states, for the ANSPs and so on can start. So we're expecting the pilot states to do so as soon as possible. As Cesar already pointed out, it starts in 2023 in April, and afterwards this will be made available within the IFPS system, and therefore the states will be able to use the functionalities that are implemented. Why I'm saying that? Simply because not all functionalities will be implemented right from the start. Cesar, correct me if I'm wrong. The stay indicator, the ARIS, let's say, addressing within the improved OT flight plan format will not be available right from the start. That's something that we will push a little bit on the timeline in order to ensure an iterative process, not to put the burden too high on the users, to have a smooth development of the improved OT flight plan, to allow states and NSPs to get used to it and to plan accordingly to properly use the improved OT flight plan once it is deployed. Am I right, Cesar?
Fully correct, Edgar. Just a small remark.
Sure.
For the stay, we would address, like when I say we will not implement, we will not deploy the stay data, is the stay coming from the Cesar activities, meaning the restricted airspace or holding or aerodrome as they are defined in Cesar. Today, there is in ICAO the possibility to file this stay in item 15 for a holding pattern. Yes. So if you use the today mechanism, you can use for holding pattern, but do not expect to see a reserved or restricted airspace inserted in item 15 in release 27. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for clarification, Cesar. There was one question in the Q&A part that I found quite interesting, which was referring to Mr. René Kurzenberg from the US Army. Maybe we can scroll down a little bit and find that back. It was about helicopter flights using the improved OT flight plan. Can we find that maybe? Did you see that, René, by chance?
I'm looking for it right now. Just a second. Oh yeah, there it is.
Could you please try to answer it?
Well, it's not that easy to answer that because it depends on the country you operate in. But
okay,
like in Germany, you would sometimes file an OOT flight plan if, like, the routing or whatever you want to do en route does not meet the route availability document restrictions, because you have the freedom of filing an OOT flight plan where the route is basically direct from waypoint to waypoint or fix to fix. And that flight plan would then not be available to IFPS. With the iOAT flight plan, it would be.
Okay, great. Thank you very much taking your time to answer this. As we are still in the last question for the panelists, referring to the implementation and deployment time, I would like to highlight that for the time being, we are setting up a pilot group of states. We try to finalize it within 2021 in order to gather as much as possible our stakeholders, operational stakeholders from the military side, but not only on the military side, let's say the states and the ANSPs on our side, in order to support us in the implementation and the future deployment of the improved OT flight plan. So if you consider the improved OT flight plan a valuable tool, and there's a significant chance for the resources to be available, then we would really invite you to join us. You have my email address, of course, later on, once you can see all the data. And I would also like the opportunity to highlight to you our guidelines for the harmonized improved flight plan from EUROCONTROL that have been published. And once you come back to our webinar later on for the recording and the related data, the link to this guideline will be provided to you. All the information that are necessary and relevant to you for the implementation or better the deployment afterwards, you can find in there. You will see what are the principles of the improved OT flight plan. You will see what are the potential benefits and so on. And even more important, you will also see what you need to do in order to file the improved OT flight plan correctly, to file the right information or to fill the right information into the right flight plan item. So that is basically then, I think, the end of our panel discussions. I would like to thank you very much, not only the panelists, but of course also you using our Q&A function and the chat function for the very interesting questions that you have raised. I hope that we were able to answer them to the extent possible. Of course, we were not able to answer all of them, but of course, we all are available to you afterwards in case you might have further questions, and we're happy to come back to you to finalize your picture, your perspective on the improved OT flight plan. So thanks for that. I would like to quickly wrap up what we have seen today. It's the improved OT flight plan is a new feature that is not only addressing today's time-based operations, but at the same time also meant to be the entry into the trajectory-based operations in the future. When this will happen, we will see. But the 4D trajectory idea, that is something that we also address within the improved OT flight plan. That's why we call it at the same time the initial mission trajectory. This initial mission trajectory is, of course, also updatable. So the format we have right now is a software format, of course, that we can update over time. So once new standards are being deployed via ICAO, for example, the new FIXM format, FFIs, that is something that we can take on board. Of course, we are already prepared to take those on board. We're not in very close, but in close coordination, that the features of FIXM and FFIs will also be available in the improved OT flight plan, just as a short outlook. Further on, you should have understood that there are basically two areas of interest for the improved OT flight plan. First, of course, is to express the specific military operational stakeholder perspectives and military mission needs, and in order to ensure that those are expressed properly and can be performed operationally within the future flexible and dynamic European ATM environment. That's very important. We are addressing only IFR flights within controlled airspace. The improved OT flight plan can be used for GAT, OAT mixed flights or for pure OAT flights. If you fly purely GAT, then of course, obviously, you would use a normal GAT flight plan. The distribution should be IFPS, so ECARC wide. There are no confidentiality issues to be expressed in the improved OT flight plan format. The information inside is the information that you would put also into a normal flight plan like GAT. If you have issues with the distribution of that information, then you can simply use the protected function within the IFPS that provides that information only to those ANSPs that area of responsibility you are transiting. So that's something very important. We have seen that there are a lot of benefits connected to the improved OT flight plan. There are common benefits for the overall system approach, let's say, like compatibility, interoperability issues, predictability issues, transparency issues, like Nicolas from the French Air Force highlighted, that not only you are now clearly representing your intentions to the airspace you are flying in, it's also the opposite. If somebody wants to use your airspace, then you will be able to perfectly read without ambiguity what's going on. And further to that, you can be sure about the services you can expect, because in some countries it may be the case that the services provided by a military ANSP are in a way different to what civil ANSPs are providing as a service. So that's something that we also I will not say fixing, but something that we are addressing at the same time. There are benefits for the military operational stakeholders. Like I said, they are able to express their operational needs also now as in the future with a common format that is readable within IFPS, which at the same time, of course, provides information to all the stakeholders involved in the flight plan distribution, but mainly, of course, to the network manager, who is, if I may say, the spider in the web responsible for the performance of the European ATM network. And of course, to take this performance seriously, there are certain performance criteria, key performance areas that need to be respected and need to be fulfilled. And it's the task of the network manager to do so. And with this improved OT flight plan, we have the opportunity to get more information, because what do we have today? If you file a flight plan with OAT, you will pretty soon realize that this will not be processed to IFPS. Therefore, this is not subject to IFPS and therefore also not subject as relevant data for the network manager. So he has no real knowledge about this. There are other ways to gather the information, yes, of course, but not in his system, and therefore this provides additional effort right now for ANSPs. We have heard the example of MUAC from Christoph, who said that right now this is more or less a manual process of controllers or flight data personnel that are doing some extra efforts in order to convert potential OAT flight plans into another flight plan format that is distributable. Let's call it system flight plan within the MUAC system. So all these extra efforts that are related to, let's say, resources can be reduced through automation. So that's again an issue of interoperability, compatibility that we are also addressing, and this will also emphasize and support cross-border operations, which is really something that we consider to be very important within the European ATM network, and especially when we look at NATO member states, that will facilitate those cross-border movements between NATO member states at the same time. Okay, looking on the watch, if I'm not mistaken, and I see nodding heads everywhere, we are hitting typical military approach, if I may say so, the end of our webinar. But before we come to the end, of course, I would like to give each panelist the possibility to provide their last key messages, a takeaway, very short and brief, 1 minute statement of what their takeaway from today is. I would start in the same sequence that we had before. So please, Cesar, you are number one.
Thank you, Edgar. Very briefly, join us. And remember, Network Manager will support you. You are not alone in this implementation and deployment. Network Manager will be there for civil and military operational stakeholders. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Cesar. That was a very short and concise and at the same time clear message from you. Thank you very much. Nicolas, your statement, please.
Yes, for the military communities, the importance is to maintain our capacity and the capability to use the airspace in Europe, and the evolution of the systems generally are very important for us, and we will use this evolution, and we will bring our support to this evolution to maintain our capacity to make our operation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nicolas. That was a clear message. The improved OT flight plan will not and should not impair your military operational needs. That's pretty clear. Thank you very much. Christoph, your takeaway, please.
Yeah, very short. I think a bit the same as with the one I started. Okay, iOAT should provide, or I think it provides the means to increased automation, which is a benefit for us as an ANSP. And it paves the way, I think, for better predictability for OAT traffic, although probably initially a bit limited, but okay, it's a stepping stone towards a full TBO. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christoph. So your highlight is really the automative part, the automation part to be precise, decreasing workload and increasing predictability. Thank you very much, Christoph. And last but not least, René, please, your takeaway.
Interesting panel, and looking forward for the project being realized finally, and yeah, bringing all the benefits we are talking about today.
Okay, perfect. So at the end, I would like to thank you again to the panelists, and thank you again, of course, outside in the world, in the aviation world, your interested parties for the improved OT flight plan. We highly appreciate your interest. And thank you very much for your questions that you have raised and your discussion points. I hope at least to a certain extent we were able to fulfill our task to give you a feedback on your questions and comments. And last but not least, of course, I would like you to stay tuned for our next webinar, which will be the Business Aviation's Flight Plan at Net Zero. And Net Zero here refers to zero emissions. Thank you very much. This is the end of the webinar. Bye-bye.